The rule of law, Donald Trump, and immigration law. They don't go together. They're like sardines and peanut butter. Donald Trump doesn't believe in the rule of law. Donald Trump just declared on national television, basically an impeachable offense, that he doesn't believe in the due process clause of the Constitution or his obligation to uphold it. Wow. The United States Supreme Court was listening loud and clear, and now they're going to have to make new decisions because there's a new emergency petition, what else, brought up to the Supreme Court again on immigration issues, coming out of Judge Chen's decision in San Francisco about the elimination of a documented status. This isn't even about undocumented. 300,000 Venezuelans have documented status under the temporary protective status program. And Judge Chen said you can't eliminate it just because you think they're all criminals when they're not. Now the United States Supreme Court is going to get their chance to finally rule on this issue, and we cover it on Unprecedented, only on the Legal AF YouTube channel. And here's a clip. And let's move on then to the latest emergency petition, number 12, if you're playing the Donald Trump craps all over the Constitution home game. And the reason we have 12 emergency petitions by Donald Trump is, as we talked about at length before, this is his way to short circuit the deliberative process of the Supreme Court. That is a body that generally does not operate well under pressure, does not operate well under emergency situations, is built to be a tortoise, not a hare, is built to be deliberative and with lots of briefing and lots of time behind the scenes to lobby each other in a very collegial way to get votes and to circulate decisions and opinions and have the law clerks go to lunch and pizza parties and whatever. And then a little time in the hallway with Amy Coney Barrett and Ketanji Brown Jackson, a little, hey, do you want to go to Sweet Greens and whatever with our federal marshals in tow? Do you want but Donald Trump doesn't want all that. He wants to eliminate all of that and just make this knee-jerk ideological voting. So the way to do that is you conjure up phony emergencies. I mean, the animating policy of the Trump administration is every effing thing's an emergency. Venezuela's at war with us. It's an emergency. Oh, I get to use the Alien Enemies Act if it's an emergency or a war. Everything's an emergency. And so, he tries to expand his power by claiming false emergencies. Now, the Supreme Court has been complicit in all of this because on one side, they want to eliminate the criticism they got for operating a shadow docket, right? Which is you file an emergency petition, they vote yes or no on bringing it on board very, very quickly with very limited briefing. Then the first justice that gets it doesn't want to look like they're doing things in the dark. So she or he refers it over to the full 9, even though they have the power to reject it on an emergency application. So now they've converted it from an emergency application that one justice can handle into a whole full-blown thing without proper briefing, with an incomplete skeletal record, without any time for deliberative process, without any oral argument. And they issue these one paragraph, what do you call it? A magic 8-ball meets an oracle. What are they talking about? How do you, instead of the 5, 6, 7 months of process and briefing and oral argument, and then more, or maybe even more briefing, and then they think about it, and then they cogitate about it, and then they work the hallways about it, and then they make a ruling, and then it's 40, 50, 60 pages, and you and I spend weeks trying to figure out what that means. So Trump figured out that if he short-circuited the Supreme Court, it would be to his advantage. He'd get instant voting, 4-3, and then he'd only have to fight for the middle with Roberts and Barrett. So we have the latest, and this one is about the temporary protective status of about 300,000 Venezuelans, but you could insert another group. You could insert Haitians, you could insert Colombians, you could insert Nigerians, whatever you want to insert there. Happens to be now about Venezuelans. A federal judge in San Francisco, Judge Chen, took a look at the decision by Kristi Noem 14 days into her office and said, no, you can't overturn the prior secretary's ruling to give these people 18 more months to stay in the United States. And, but that's inconsistent with the argument that Trump's making, right? That on one hand, we got to get rid of these Venezuelan scum, his words, not mine, and get them off the street because they're all members of Tren de Aragua, which is totally false and slanderous against that group, and blood libel against that group of people. Very proud group of people. On one hand, you have to say that, but then think about this, Dina. In the other cases about the Alien Enemies Act, they say that Venezuela is so bad of a place that a narco terrorist gang has taken over leadership and runs the country as a narco state. Well, then how does that square with Kristi Noem announcing that everything is safe in Venezuela for people to return to and they don't have to go back? How do you square that circle? Go ahead, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what they're really were arguing in their petition that they filed with the Supreme Court was, one, they're not following the procedure. Of course, Trump is not following the correct procedure, and that this is racially motivated. You know, they're calling out Trump for doing that because even the example, as you were saying, I mean, Ukraine, we have so many migrants who legally came here from during the Ukrainian war. We're not hearing about Trump wanting to deport them because he likes the color of their skin. I mean, there is a real targeting of brown and black people in this country by Trump. And this is not people are here illegally. Let's make this really clear. When Trump was saying, you know, the border crossing is a problem, the criminals are a problem, people, they have legal status. They have temporary protected status. It's temporary, but it's legal. And it's because they have the government gave it to them saying that it is too dangerous for them to return to their country. And to your point, Trump is making the opposite argument depending on the case. And so the Venezuelans are asking for the stay to remain in place, basically for them not to be deported while the underlying issue of whether or not they should keep their status remains the same. The Supreme Court, they have seen what happens, the planes, people can't come back. This should be an easy decision to stop the administration from deporting anybody until the actual case is decided. Because that's all this is. This isn't, again, asking the Supreme Court to decide the case. This is asking the Supreme Court whether or not to stop Trump from deporting them while the case unfolds.
That's right. That's what people sometimes forget. That's why these emergency wins, and Donald Trump's had a handful of them, although he's on the losing end of most of them these days. These emergency wins are not about the substance of the case. And the Supreme Court has yet to rule on the substance of any Trump policy as of today. It's all about procedural issues. And yes, if they stop or stay, you may think this indicates that where the votes are, but not necessarily. When we come back to the next term, we're going to start seeing the Supreme Court really making a decision about where they stand against the lawless president. But as of right now, they haven't. And he's been on the losing end of the last two decisions, 7-2 and 9-0 about immigration. So, you know, it's interesting that he's pressing his luck, Trump, to try to take on another immigration issue with the ringing in his ears of the last two losses, trying to reverse course and get a win. It's very interesting. If I were them, I would just let these poor Venezuelans, I mean, poor in terms of I have pathos for them, stay in the country. As Judge Chen found, they are higher educated and commit less crime than the average American. And they've contributed billions to the economy. And I have friends in the Venezuelan community here in Miami. And this is my little note to them. If those aren't your brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins, it could well be those that are Venezuelan citizens and that vote. So you should see your face in their faces the way that I do. And how you can continue to support Donald Trump with his depraved immigration policies is really beyond me. And I'm talking to you, the Venezuelan community, the proud Venezuelan community that sits in Miami in and around Doral Golf Course and in Doral and around Donald Trump International and all of that. This could easily be you. Is it okay for the President of the United States and the Homeland Security Director or Secretary to call your people scum? And to equate everybody from your country with being part of a narco-terrorist gang? I say no. And I say no. And that should be something that motivates people come the midterm elections, if not beyond. Let's talk about.
And they did it the right way. They did it the right way. There's none of that argument of I came in legally, they should too, or whatever. These people have legal status. Yeah.
They're documented. Right. That's what this is. To end it on this is a program that was bipartisanly created in 1990 by George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush the Elder. It's a Republican idea to do this. And it's supposed to protect people whose countries are war-torn, hit by natural disasters or national emergencies, or, for other reasons. And Venezuelans and Haitians and all fit that bill, Cubans and the rest. That was Dina Dahl along with me, Michael Popok. You're here on Legal AF. If you like that kind of content where we sit at the intersection of law and politics, and in this case, the Supreme Court, hit the subscribe button. Help us in our drive to get to 700,000 subscribers by next week. We're already well on our way, but with your help, we will get there. Then it'll give you reminders when we do content like that. You'll love Dina Dahl and her work. We got two great contributors that have just joined us. The world-class Sidney Blumenthal and Sean Wilentz. They're going to be our resident historians, putting everything in a historical context that this lawless president is doing. And of course, you can go to the Legal AF Substack and you can nerd out there with all sorts of things that we do, including posting the actual court filings, talking about them, ad-free versions of our podcast and hot takes. And then I do a morning Legal AF roundup. Of course, the morning AF only on the Legal AF Substack. So until my next report, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.